Alright, so this is Umbra here. I'm going to try and make him some ears since what he currently has are blobs. Hi Delphine, go away. I'm using Super Sculpty Firm. This is already pretty much preconditioned. I've been playing with it. And what I'm going to do is get the hair off of him when I see it. Sorry about that. I'm going to basically make a kind of ear shape, just more or less like that, and then just sort of roll it in the air. So I'll do that properly. He is going to have fuzzy ears, or at least somewhat fuzzy, not shaved. So that means I don't need to make them quite as thin as I would otherwise. I can either leave some room for the fuzz now, basically add some. I could either have extra clay on them now that I can carve the fuzz into, or I can add the fuzz on later. Either way will work. And I'll probably do a little bit of both, honestly. And I'm going to bake these and then attach them to his head so they don't get squished. Just like I did with his head itself. So the rest of his body is still soft right now. And yes, the dogs are playing nicely. They're just noisy. I could roll out a sheet and then cut the shapes out of it. That would work just as well as making the shapes and then rolling them out or whatever. Do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. That's just all wrong. So I just cut out two pieces exactly the same, pretty much. And then I can just flip one over, and they'll be mirror images of each other. I'll cut the bases so that they're the same too, just up there. It'd probably be a good idea to have a little bit more of a base than I do, but we'll see how this goes. So just like that, I'm dropping them, I have the very basic shape of the ear, which I will of course need to adjust. I need to add onto the back of it for the bulb of the ear, stuff like that. I need to make sure they're the same, which right now they're not quite the same. Because his ears will be pinned, or at least back, I'm going to flatten them a little bit. The ear does change shape somewhat, depending on what position it's in. So that's something to keep in mind. Oh my goodness, dogs! Chill out. Stepping on squeaky toys back here. So that's the very basic. And then, if I were working in epoxy, I would actually let this cure or mostly cure. You can't do quite the same with epoxy, at least I can't. It handles just a little bit differently, but you can do the same basic idea. But because Sculpey, you can see here where I've blended the two parts together, it doesn't exactly grab onto itself that well. Cured onto baked, or baked raw onto baked. So it would be easier if I can do it all in one step, in the sense of getting it to adhere to itself. But of course, doing this is going to deform the rest of the ear. But at least it gives me a base to start with. And then I can poke it around. Rocky, Delphine! Chill out, you two. Good girl, Delphine. Good girl. Sit. Sit. Good girl. Here you go. We just need little breaks every so often to calm them down. They didn't get a walk this morning, so we're a little... Hi, Rocky. No, you can't eat my clay. I think these could be a little thicker than I made them, so I'm going to just start over. And as you may have noticed, this is countertop. This is my new desk. It's 8 feet long. It's amazing. I built it. It's really just a piece of countertop sitting on top of a frame that's made out of 2x4s. Gives me a lot of room to work with, and I really like this surface. It's, well, it's still smooth right now. It'll probably get messed up with epoxy and stuff before too long, but right now it's still smooth, which is great for rolling out stuff like this. And just for generally working on. This one is much thicker than that one. I didn't roll it out very evenly. I'm just not having luck today. Things are not working the way that I want them to. Let's try this again. I'm going to try with a little bit more clay. Unfortunately, that's all the clay I had conditioned right at the moment. So, I will slice off another chunk from my block of sculpting. sometimes things just don't work the first time, or the first 12 times, the first 100 times. Sometimes you've just not got things going well. When I'm conditioning a lot of clay, I'll use my pasta machine. But with just a little bit like this, I just do it by hand. I don't know if you can hear my joints cracking when I'm doing this. It takes it's a pretty good amount of force on the clay to really squish it. It gets softer and softer though. Alright. Try not to roll it out so thin this time. And hopefully get it fairly even. There are tricks you can do, like laying something that's the thickness that you want, one on each side. Stuff like that. Actually, that might be worth a shot. I don't know how thick I want it, but this could work. My roller's not perfectly even either, but it's tapered. But this will keep it from getting any thinner than the toothpicks. Delphine, the dog who's making all the noise over here right now, just got her stitches out this morning from being spayed a couple of weeks ago. So she's very, very happy because she's finally out of the cone of shame. Everybody's really happy because that cone was really annoying. She banged into everything. Okay, so these ears are much thicker. Should be a little easier to work with for what I'm looking to do. You can always start with them thicker and then carve them down. It's a little easier to work with them when they're thicker. I am going to keep his ears. One of the reasons I'm making them fuzzy is because shaved ears are just, they're so thin. They're so thin on real horses, which means that they're just crazy thin on sculptures in this scale, and they get really fragile. They get difficult to cast because the resin doesn't flow, so you end up with bubbles in them, and which means a lot of things you have to fix, or the tips don't cast, stuff like that, so you have to fill them. And then they tend to be more fragile, so that when people ship horses, they are much more likely to break than if they're a little thicker. And since he's not, he's not posed for the show ring or anything, he's not, standing up all nice and straight anyhow, I figured we would go ahead and leave him his ear fuzz. Keeps the bugs out. This is isopropyl alcohol, 91%. You can get it at any drugstore, any pharmacy will have it. You can get it at Target or Walmart or whatever. It helps smooth it. I don't know, like, if you use too much, if it'll mess it up in any way, but I'm not using too much, just a little. Kind of acts as a lubricant. So this ear is a right ear, left, right ear. Yes, that's his right side. Wow. I'll make sure that they're the right size, not too big. And that they're the right shape. I have some references pulled up here of Arabians with their ears down, pinned in one way or another, or at least back. The ears aren't exactly pinned, they're just kind of back, but that's what my references are, so that works out well. This is one of the times when it's really important to make sure that your references match what breed you're going for and what type we're going for within that breed. The ears on different breeds can be very different. I mean, even to extremes like the Marwaris and that have the curly ears. But so once I get the overall shape right on both of them, then I'll go and add the detailing. But I want to make sure that they stay symmetrical since his ears are both back pretty evenly. I want especially to try and keep them pretty symmetrical. That said, I've met real horses with ears that are totally different from each other. One ear is was no kidding, an inch shorter than the other one. This was a show horse. It wasn't, and it wasn't like he'd had frostbite or something. It wasn't like his, they were damaged in some way. They both looked like perfectly normal ears. They were just totally different from each other. So it can't happen. That was a saddlebred, I think, the horse that I'm thinking of. Took some photos of him. He's weird looking. The ears. This is really just a very light touch for most of this, just almost just brushing my fingers across to make small adjustments. The clay is soft and it's easy to change more than you wanted. Probably would not be a bad idea, actually, for me to make a little wire framework for these to sit on. And unfortunately, because I've been moving studio, nothing is where it used to be, so I don't know where anything is right now. Which makes finding... Aha, there's my wire. Means that finding things has been a little tricky lately. I don't have a proper pair of wire cutters handy. They're somewhere around here. In a bin, probably. Haven't really unpacked yet. At all. That works. So what I'm going to do is just make a little sort of stand, kind of like the one I made when I was working on his head, that just allows me to see what I'm doing and set them down without worrying about squishing them. And in this case, hopefully, I can make it so that they sit right next to each other, so I can easily see if they're the same. Not too close, though. I want to be able to work on them. It's also not a bad idea to have some wire sticking out of them for purposes of attaching them to his head once they're done and baked. It's not absolutely necessary. I could do a whole bunch of things. I could glue them on. I could attach them just using the little base of the ear. But having the wire already in there gives me another potential option in case I need it. Okay. Again, I'm looking at my references back and forth, back and forth. I have a whole bunch of them pulled up. I have 6 photos here right now. All of ears, all of Arabian ears. And I will definitely, I always have to do more adjusting after they're on the horse. That's no problem. It's important not to get too attached to anything here, because it often ends up not working out in the end, and then you have to redo it. If you get too attached to it, you can put off redoing it a lot longer than you should. And then you still have to redo it, but you've spent a lot of time trying to fix it. Sometimes it's easier to just trash it and move on. So I'm going to try and both give the ear more depth and start to indicate where the hair is at the same time. This may not be the best tool for that. Let's try that side. Of course, you want to follow the directions that the hair actually grows in. And this hair right in this area actually overlaps this hair. So I'm going to try and kind of carve back the lower stuff towards the back edge of the ear. I can find my tools, which are right here in front of me. And this is all with a very light touch. It's a pretty delicate little piece of clay that I've got going on here. I'm missing my favorite tools. I don't know where they've gone to. All of my clay shapers with the chisel point, they're around here somewhere. I know I packed them up and I just don't know where I put them when I was moving them down here. So I need to find those little guys because I really could use them. This is a taper point. It's just like a little cone. I have the rim of the ear and then the hair starts just inside of it. Delineated. But the hair on the outer edge comes out, so it's not the same. You learn very up close things about horses when you sculpt like this. And it's another reason why it's always helpful to have the reference photos. It's handy at all times. Saves you from trying to trust memory, which can be very tricky. Could really use those angled chisels. I really should find them. Here's one. Not a very good one. It's better than nothing. Oh, it's not bad. Just a little dirty. So the problem with the metal tools right here is that they're giving me just a little bit too hard of a line. I want a fairly soft line because this is hair, it's not a rigid structure. And so I don't want to indicate it with too harsh of lines. The lady is not helping here. Conk. Put the camera against the light. Again. Sorry about that. course, since the whole ear is flexible, this is just a little bit more difficult. It would probably be easier to sculpt the outer edge of the ear and then add the fuzz in after I bake the outer edge so it's all rigid. Meh. It's starting to sort of get there. Now the shape of the back is all wrong. You get one side, that's on the other side. It's just kind of a matter of going back and forth until you like both sides. And again, there is always the option of carving and sanding after it's after curing it, whichever way it cures. Again, baking it for this stuff or just letting it cure for epoxy sculpt. If I were working in wax, I could warm it up and sculpt it like this, then chill it and carve away. I've done some work in wax recently. Not exactly wax, it's monster clay, which is a wax-based clay, which is what, I don't know if you can see it, this thing over here is, it's a mask that I'm working on. And that's monster clay. I've not really used it on any, I haven't used it on any horses, but it's very nice for that larger scale stuff that doesn't need quite so much detail. It may be good for detail too, I just haven't really tried it. Problem is it's a non-hardening material, which is good and bad. It means that you don't have to worry about it setting up on you when you don't want it to, but it means you have to mold it or cast it. And for me, I'm going to be molding and casting all this stuff anyway, but I don't do it myself. I take it to Mountain View Studios in Tennessee, MVS. Will and Sherry Rhodes, they do awesome work. And if I have a piece that's not rigid, then getting it there is a little bit trickier. I've been hand delivering my sculptures to them anyway, one way or another, which is great because it means I don't have to worry about them shipping, getting lost in the mail, which doesn't happen often, but it would be really disastrous if it happened to me with an original sculpture. So the hand delivering is nice, but I would still have to transport a very delicate piece of artwork, which, if I can avoid doing that, avoid risk. And I can cast things myself. I'll be casting that mask myself, and I've cast horses and stuff. I just don't like to if I can avoid it. It's too much work. It's too much work that's not real fun. And I don't get the same quality as MVS can. I have to do a lot of cleanup. Yeah, the other one fell off. Oh, this looks very harsh right now. I'll run over it and smooth it after I lay everything in. I'm kind of experimenting, if I gotta be honest. Trying to figure out what will work best for what I'm looking to do. Another good option might be to take a paintbrush and let's see. I know that works very well on epoxy sculpt. Just soften those edges. Yeah, that's not too bad. Alright. I think that for right now I'm happy with that. So I'm actually going to go ahead and cure it, which I'm going to use a heat gun if I can find it, as usual. I can never find anything. This is something that I had just the other day, so you can get a little tour of my studio. There's the third dog. She doesn't do too much. She's 14 years old and kind of sick. In the way that 14-year-olds are. Nothing, just heart failure and... Let's see. Alright, well I'm going to take a break while I go find my heat gun. I'll be back shortly. I'm going to move my alcohol away, cover it up. I'm going to move Umbra away because I don't want to get him warm. I don't want to pre-bake him at all right now. Move my extra clay away. Try not to destroy the good ear that I was with the other good ear. All these little bits to the side. This is a little bit of his mane. Alright. So get everything. All the clay. We will cure this little ear. And so this may not result in a full cure, so I'll still want to cure it in the oven. Basically, I'm just going to heat it with the heat gun. Trying to keep it kind of even. And I'm keeping it moving. If you get it too hot, it will blister and burn. Don't burn the Sculpey, it's not good for you. Toxic fumes. Plus it ruins your stuff. It's better avoided. And you can see, maybe, I don't know if you can see, there's still some little join areas there that aren't perfectly smoothed in. That's okay. I'll smooth them in later with epoxy sculpt. Or even with Sculpey, maybe, we'll see. I could have stuck this in the oven as well. That would work just fine. I'm using the heat gun because it means I don't have to wait for the oven. And because it's kind of cold in here and I could use the heat in the room, honestly. This will, like I said, this may not result in a full curing. In fact, in this case, I'm pretty sure it won't, because I'm not going to keep it at temperature for long enough for it to cure fully. I was mentioning on my Facebook page earlier today, actually, how it doesn't really matter to me to get 100% perfectly cured, because I know I'm casting them. If I needed to have a part that I knew would be permanent, that I knew would hold up, if I was selling an original, for example, I'd be much more concerned about making sure that everything was 100% properly cured. But as long as it's rigid for me, that's just fine. All it needs to hold up to is making a mold, which is not that strenuous. I mean, they can mold soft clay, so you can imagine that any form of rigid stuff is not too bad. This is going to be hot. I don't know if it's fully cured yet, but it'll remain flexible for a little while. Yeah, it's pretty close. You can tweak it a little bit, but not too much once it's cured. So that's hot. I'm going to let it cool down. And I will be starting on the other ear, which will basically be a process of getting it to match. This can twist on the thing, which is useful. So I'm going to stick my other ear back on over here. It's important to make sure you do a left ear and a right ear. I've accidentally done both right ears before. It's kind of annoying when you realize and you have to go back and redo it. But since I baked this, you can see it's firm. I don't have to worry about messing it up now. And basically I'm going to do the same thing on this ear, except that now I have the added challenge of making it match this one. And then I will attach them. So that's how I make ears. One way to make ears. It's not the only way.